Imagine taking a life-saving medication and just trusting that the chemical composition and the dosage are mathematically perfect.
Right. You just assume it is.
Yeah, exactly. But now imagine that the only actual proof of that mathematical perfection is like a smudged entry in a paper logbook, just sitting on a desk in a manufacturing facility 5,000 miles away.
Or even worse, it's a file on an unsecured computer.
Oh, right, where anyone could just open it, edit the numbers, and hit save without leaving a single digital fingerprint.
Which is terrifying.
It really is. So today, we are looking at the invisible digital shield that prevents that exact nightmare from happening. We are exploring data integrity in the pharmaceutical industry.
And I mean, it really is the absolute bedrock of global healthcare. Because the physical chemistry of a drug is only as reliable as the data proving how it was made.
Which makes sense, yeah.
Right. Like, if you cannot mathematically prove with an unbroken chain of evidence every single action taken during manufacturing, you don't really have medicine. You just have, a very highly engineered guessing game.
A guessing game you do not want to play with your health.
Exactly.
And to figure out how the industry solves this, we are pulling insights directly from a stack of resources and compliance guides published by Validfor, including some really technical breakdowns from their CEO and co-founder, Omer Simon.
There's some great stuff in there.
Yeah, really eye-opening. So whether you are catching up on industry compliance, prepping for a massive tech integration meeting, or you're just insanely curious about how the medicine in your cabinet is monitored, this deep dive will break down mechanics of modern pharmaceutical data. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, to really get into it, we have to start with the baseline of what perfect data actually looks like.
Right.
Because in a highly regulated environment, I mean, data integrity isn't just about making sure your servers don't crash or that your hard drives are backed up. It's way deeper than that.
It's not just basic IT.
No, not at all. The sources define data integrity through a very specific framework. The whole goal is to create this set of rigid, interconnected rules so that every single data entry is inherently trustworthy from the microsecond it's generated all the way through to the end of its life cycle.
And the framework the sources constantly refer to for this is LCOA plus ALCOA plus. It's treated as the universal benchmark.
Oh, yeah. It is the gold standard.
Yeah.
So ALCOA stands for attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate.
That is a mouthful.
It is, yeah. And then later, the industry added the plus to mandate that data must also be complete, consistent, enduring, and available.
Okay, I want to translate those words into actual mechanics because just, reading a list of adjectives doesn't really explain how a system operates on the floor.
Fair point.
Like when I was going through the Validfor guides, I started visualizing LSCOA plus less like a standard IT policy and more like a high-stakes locked room diary or maybe a digital bank vault.
A bank vault is a great way to look at it.
Right, like to get in, two different people need to turn two separate keys simultaneously, and a camera records the exact microsecond the tumblers click, and you have to sign off on the logs right away.
That is a much more accurate way to view it. So let's break down the mechanics of your bank vault analogy using LCOA plus AC. Take contemporaneous, for example.
Okay.
That means the data must be recorded the exact moment the action happens.
So no delays?
None. A technician cannot weigh a powder, write the number on their glove, and then, type it into the system an hour later while they're on break. The system requires real-time input.
And what about the attributable part?
Well, attributable means the system mathematically links that specific entry to a unique, authenticated user profile. You can't just have a sticky note with a shared password on the monitor.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no shared logins.
Exactly.
So what about the enduring part of the plus? I imagine that's the equivalent of like pouring concrete over the vault once the door shuts so no one can revise history.
That's a great visual. Yeah, mechanically enduring often means implementing a write once, read many storage architecture. It's commonly known as WORM in the industry.
WORM, got it.
Yeah. The physical disk, or the server architecture, is configured so that once the data is written, it is cryptographically locked.
So you literally can't change it.
Right. If a user realizes they typed, say, 50 milligrams instead of 5 milligrams, they cannot just hit backspace and overwrite the file. The original error is locked in time.
Wait, really? So what do?
They have to create a brand new entry, correct the value, append a digital signature, and then enter a coded reason for the change.
Wow.
Yeah, so the system permanently retains both the error and the correction in this parallel invisible ledger.
What's fascinating here is how these aren't just IT rules living on a server rack somewhere. This is the daily lived practice on the pharma floor.
Oh, absolutely. It dictates every physical movement.
Right. If a technician is wearing 3 layers of PPE and operating a centrifuge, they are living LCOA plus in real time. If their data entry isn't perfectly attributable and contemporaneous, the exact second they pull a sample, they risk compromising a $1 million batch of medicine.
Which is why the stakes are incredibly high.
Definitely.
But, we need to look at why companies are actually investing millions of dollars to build these complex lockdown systems in the first place.
Yeah, I want to dig into that motivation because, anyone familiar with this industry knows that regulatory bodies like the FDA in the US or the EMA in Europe, they audit these facilities ruthlessly.
Oh, you do. It's intense.
Right. But if a company already knows they need to comply to avoid massive fines, why do the Validfor materials spend so much time reframing data integrity as this strategic business advantage instead of just like an administrative tax they have to pay to keep the lights on?
Well, because treating it as a compliance tax leads to bare minimum execution.
Ah, I see.
Yeah. If a company is only trying to survive an FDA audit, they will build brittle systems that just barely check the boxes. The Validfor guides argue that the absolute core driver has to be patient safety.
Not just passing an inspection.
Exactly. When your digital architecture mathematically guarantees that the chemical composition matches the label, you guarantee the treatment actually works.
Right.
But beyond the moral imperative, there is a massive financial reality that companies often overlook until they are deep into a crisis.
You're talking about the invisible costs of bad data.
I am. If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about the cost of rework, scrap, and investigations.
Okay.
If a quality control system flags a batch of medicine because the data trail is ambiguous, like maybe a timestamp is missing or an audit trail wasn't active on a piece of testing equipment, that entire batch has to be quarantined.
Oh, wow. So everything just stops.
Everything stops. A team of highly paid scientists and quality assurance managers has to spend weeks investigating a digital ghost.
A digital ghost. I like that.
And during that time, the product isn't shipping. If they can't prove the data is authentic, they literally have to incinerate the batch. So doing it right the first time, with bulletproof ALCOA plus systems, it saves an astronomical amount of money in prevented waste.
And it builds partner trust, right? It protects the reputation.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if I'm a massive pharmaceutical brand outsourcing my manufacturing to a contract lab, I will immediately pull my contracts if I find out their database allows silent overwrites.
Without hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
Bulletproof data is the currency of partner trust in this industry.
Which naturally brings us to the actual execution, moving from the philosophy of perfect data to the reality of building these systems from scratch on a bustling, complicated manufacturing floor.
Yeah, moving from theory to reality.
Right. And the Validfor materials provide a very specific roadmap for implementation. It mandates a strict order of operations.
Right, because you can't just buy a shiny new software platform, plug it into the wall, and expect it to magically enforce LCOA plus wood.
Yeah, I imagine that doesn't work.
You absolutely cannot do that. The first critical step, outlined by Omer Simon and the Validfor team, is defining the scope and mapping the processes.
What does that look like in practice?
You have to physically and digitally map the journey of every single piece of data before you even think about software. You look at your systems, like your LIMS, your laboratory information management system, and your batch record software.
Okay, so mapping where it all starts.
Exactly. Where does the data originate? Does a technician write a temperature on a sticky note, walk across the room, and type it into a terminal?
Oh, back to the sticky notes.
Right. Because if they do, that sticky note is an unmapped, uncontrolled data vulnerability. You have to map the reality of the floor, not just the theory of the floor.
Because if you just buy strict data compliance software and bolt it onto a broken sticky note process, you haven't actually fixed anything.
Not at all.
You've just digitized the chaos.
That is a perfect way to phrase it. Digitized chaos. So once you map the actual workflow and eliminate those vulnerabilities, the second step is writing the SOPs, the standard operating procedures.
Okay, the rules of the road.
Right. And the guidance here is very specific. SOPs must be written with simple words and clear bullet points.
Simple is good.
It's vital. They need to cover data entry, change control, and backup protocols, explicitly tying every physical action back to an LLCOA plus principle.
That emphasis on simplicity is brilliant. I always compare bad SOPs to reading a dense legal contract, whereas good SOPs should read like IKEA furniture instructions for scientists.
IKEA instructions. I love that.
Right, because you have to think about the reality of the end user. It doesn't matter if the operator reading the SOP has a PhD in biochemistry. If it's 2:00 a.m. on a Tuesday, the facility is loud, they're wearing heavy safety gear, and they are just exhausted, a 40-page dense manual is completely useless.
It is entirely useless. Complexity is the enemy of compliance.
Yeah, exactly. The instructions for authenticating a data log need to be so modular and bulleted that they are practically foolproof under stress.
Because a tired operator will skip steps if the steps are too hard to understand. And that leads directly to the third step of the blueprint, picking and validating the tools.
The software itself.
Right. You need software with automatic, non-editable audit trails. You need strict role-based access control. But you don't just install them, you run rigorous test management.
What kind of testing?
You execute installation qualification, operational qualification, and performance qualification, the IQ, OQ, PQ frameworks. You mathematically prove that when a user tries to access a file they shouldn't, the system rejects them and logs the attempt.
So what does this all mean? To me, it means having the right kitchen, the tools, and the perfect recipe of the SOPs before you ever start cooking. They are entirely symbiotic.
That's a great summary.
Your software tools are only as effective as the SOPs governing them, and your SOPs are only enforceable if the software mathematically prevents the operator from violating them.
But even if you build a perfectly symbiotic relationship between your software and your SOPs, you still have to deal with the most unpredictable variable in the entire facility.
Let me guess. The humans operating the equipment.
Exactly. The human element. Having the perfect tools means absolutely nothing if the humans operating them are rushed, confused, or scared.
This is where the source material gets into the psychology of compliance, and I'll be honest, it threw me for a loop.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, the Validfor guide specifically advocates for encouraging early reporting without blame.
Yes, a no-blame culture.
Right, but I am struggling to reconcile a blame-free culture with the immense stakes we just talked about. In a highly regulated, high-stakes industry, isn't a blame-free culture completely counterintuitive?
It seems like it would be.
Shouldn't there be strict penalties? If a single bad data point can quarantine a $1 million batch of life-saving medicine, my instinct is that management would want zero tolerance for errors.
It's a common assumption. But here's the reality. A zero-tolerance policy doesn't actually eliminate errors. It just eliminates the reporting of errors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. If an operator is terrified of losing their job over a typo or a missed timestamp, human psychology takes over. They will attempt to quietly fix the mistake themselves.
Right, self-preservation.
Exactly. They might try to overwrite a cell or backdate a log, but because your system is built on ALCOA plus principles, the digital vault locks them out, or the audit trail flags an unauthorized modification attempt.
So they get caught anyway.
They do. And now, instead of a simple typo that could be corrected legally with a digital signature, you have an active cover-up. You trigger a massive, facility-wide deviation investigation.
The cover-up is always worse than the crime.
Every single time. By removing the blame, operators who often spot gaps way before the auditors do will actually raise their hand and report issues.
That makes total sense. If they know they won't be punished for a genuine mistake, they just flag it immediately.
Precisely. And the sources also highlight that rushing is the primary driver of these mistakes. When operators are pressured to hit production quotas, manual typing mistakes just skyrocket.
So how do you fix that without yelling at them to type faster?
The solution is UI and UX design. You simplify the screens, you implement drop-down menus and default fields so they aren't manually typing complex chemical names.
Take the keyboard away as much as possible.
Right. You integrate the testing equipment directly to the database so the machine logs the weight automatically, completely removing the human keystroke from the equation.
But, even with great UI, you are still going to face resistance from the team. To a veteran floor worker who's been doing this for 20 years, a new ALCOA plus lockdown system just looks like extra work, like 10 extra clicks to do the exact same job they've always done.
It feels incredibly disruptive to them.
Yeah.
So the Validfor text suggests a very specific psychological tool to overcome this resistance. Share real stories of near misses.
Near misses.
Yeah, management needs to gather the team and show them early wins where a problem was caught early, specifically because of the new data checks.
Make it real for them.
Exactly. When you show a skeptical operator that those 10 extra clicks successfully caught a contaminated sample before it ruined a massive batch, the abstraction fades. The rules suddenly feel tangible and necessary.
And crucially, you have to assign clear ownership, right?
Yes, clear data ownership is vital. If a specific dataset doesn't have a designated owner, anomalies will sit there unresolved because everyone on the floor assumes it's someone else's responsibility.
Which is just a disaster waiting to happen. So for everyone listening, what stands out to you here? For me, it's that fixing a technical data problem ultimately requires immense human empathy.
That's a profound way to look at it.
But of course, the human element is only part of the equation. A perfectly trained, blame-free team means absolutely nothing if the software they are typing into is a 15-year-old system.
Which brings us to the rapidly evolving technology landscape.
Okay.
You can't just set it and forget it.
Right. What are the modern minefields companies are stepping into right now?
The single biggest threat, highlighted in the Validfor materials, is the persistence of legacy software and data silos.
Silos are always the enemy.
Always. Picture a highly advanced laboratory that still relies on a 20-year-old spectrometer. The machine works perfectly for physical testing, but its software cannot generate a cryptographic audit trail,
Oh.
and it cannot connect to the facility's modern cloud database. So the data gets trapped in a silo. A technician has to export it as a flat CSV file and manually upload it elsewhere.
Which breaks the entire chain, because that CSV file can be altered before it's uploaded.
Exactly. That air gap between the old machine and the new database means the data is no longer enduring or original. The ultimate goal must be one single source of truth, which means ripping out legacy systems.
And this extends beyond your own facility, too. The sources strongly emphasize vendor risks, like outsourced labs might follow their own rules.
Oh, vendor risk is huge. If you outsource sample testing to a third-party lab, they might be using those exact same legacy systems.
So how do you control a lab you don't even own?
Through the contract. You cannot assume a vendor shares your compliance standards. You must add explicit data integrity clauses into the legal agreements, dictating exactly how data must be logged and secured.
And then audit them.
Yes, audit them regularly.
Yeah.
You are only as secure as your weakest vendor's oldest server.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We talk about legacy systems being the villain, but does upgrading to modern tech actually solve these legacy problems?
What do you mean?
Like if a pharma company moves their entire infrastructure to the cloud or implements an AI analysis tool like Validfor AI, doesn't that inherently modernize their data integrity and just wipe out those vulnerabilities?
But it modernizes the capability, but it actually multiplies the risk. This is a crucial warning from the experts. New tech brings new risks. It does not grant you a compliance-free pass.
Wait, really? It's riskier.
In many ways, yes. It requires rigorous new checks. The cloud isn't some magical, secure vault in the sky. It's a multi-tenant server architecture. You have to mathematically validate that your data is perfectly segregated from other companies on that server.
I hadn't thought about that. And what about AI and the Internet of Things?
Well, IoT devices like wireless temperature sensors create thousands of new data entry points that all need continuous connection validation.
Wow.
And AI is even more complex. If an artificial intelligence tool is processing your deviation management, it acts as a black box. How do you validate the algorithm's logic? If the AI alters a workflow, how is that change attributed? Just because the tool is smarter doesn't mean your oversight can be relaxed.
This raises an important question, though. If the technology is evolving this rapidly, how do you stay current? A flawless data policy written today might be completely obsolete in 2 years.
It requires abandoning the idea that compliance is a destination. It's a continuous living cycle. The text suggests appointing a dedicated compliance lead, someone whose sole responsibility is tracking regulatory changes.
And they just constantly update the systems.
Right. Furthermore, facilities must hold periodic review management. These are quarterly health checks where you actively try to break your own systems, review your audit trails for anomalies, and update your SOPs based on what you find.
It's a relentless process.
It really is.
Well, to quickly summarize what we've unpacked today on this deep dive, securing data in the pharmaceutical industry is about far more than buying expensive software. It requires mapping the physical reality of your floor, writing foolproof SOPs, and locking it all down with systems that mathematically enforce ALCOA plus NEM.
The digital vault.
Right. But ultimately, you have to pair that rigid digital vault with a deeply empathetic human culture, one that removes the fear of blame.
And for anyone listening who is staring down a massive compliance overhaul right now and feeling a bit overwhelmed, the source material offers a very practical starting point.
Which is?
Don't try to boil the ocean. Start small. Draft just one SOP today. Pick one single software tool you use daily and run an audit to ensure its automated trail is functioning correctly.
And for the culture side.
Gather your team and share one near-miss story to build that culture of reliability. Those micro-adjustments compound into massive systemic resilience.
Start small, but start mapping. Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We've spent this time exploring the incredibly rigid, locked-down digital vaults required to mathematically prove a drug is safe before it leaves the factory.
Right.
But as cloud architecture and supply chain tracking become more advanced, how long do you think it will be until everyday patients have an app on their phone that lets them scan a pill bottle and trace its entire unalterable digital diary right back to the very lab it was made in? The exact machine, the exact timestamp?
It's a profound shift in transparency, and it's entirely possible. The data already exists.
It's just a matter of time before that invisible digital shield is placed directly in the palm of your hand. Keep asking questions, keep stress testing your systems, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.